Reports from beyond the stars. The next video starts and they're greeted by the image of a woman who stares at the screen with multiple sets of eyes and her brown hair pinned back in a practical bun. She has 4 arms, and although there is a podium as a visual block, there is clearly a much large body behind it with 4 massive spider-like legs keeping her upright. This is normally the position I use to accept students into my classes, not to explain my own behavior. However, first introductions are in order. I am Dr. Morgana Skiway. The woman says in accented but perfectly understandable English, "I am a brute arcana, a species so typically classified as dumb muscle that it's in the official name of our kind. As such, myself and a full 5% of my species have endeavored to buck this trend by pursuing intellectual pursuits. I'm very well regarded as one of the greatest success stories in that regard. So much so that if I were to merely list off my doctorates and masters in education, it would double, if not triple, the length of this video. My involvement in the rather convoluted affairs involving myself and your son actually begins further back than you can trace your family line. Due to restorative effects, I am periodically returned to my youth. This has allowed me, and most of the galaxy, to truly shatter the biological limits upon our natural lifespans. I have surpassed my own 5 times over, the average life expectancy being 100 years for my kind. She taps the top of the podium and takes a deep breath. Now, you must understand that humans are a galactic exception, not a galactic norm. In general, every single species is almost entirely female dominant. The galactic average is said to be 1 male per 100 females, but it's closer to 1.2583 men per 100 women, so roughly 1 1/4. I tell you this so that you can better understand just how unusual the situation in my own life ended up. You see, after I found myself in between scholarly jobs with a very healthy bank balance, I decided to be a mother. However, I've never been the type for wooing or romance. So I did the responsible and rational thing and purchased a spermatozoa donation. There is a system in place for several companies that allow you to randomize what the child's father is. Despite the immensely long odds, I ended up with not only a male child, but a male child of a species I had never personally encountered before. Wait, how does that even? Mama Blue begins to ask. Some explanation is likely needed. Unlike the examples seen in much of the speculative fiction you humans labeled as science fiction, there are no true hybrids beyond truly exceptional circumstances. One takes after one parent and borrows some traits from the other. Most often, it is the females favoring the females and males favoring the males. There is the occasional exception, and there are also genetic traits that can exaggerate or even reverse this outcome. For instance, I have a mammalian ancestor. A Lopan man, I am told that they resemble the werewolves of your mythology, an interesting but not overly uncommon thing in developing civilizations due to the limited number of truly successful forms of flora and fauna. The fine details are infinitely varied, but canines, felines, arachnids, corvids, and almost all other classifications you can find on Earth are all over the place the galaxy over. That is interesting, Pablo notes. However, I have sidetracked. I named my son Emmanuel as a combination of 2 names of separate intellectuals. One was underappreciated but ultimately proven correct, the other famous but ultimately incorrect. At the time, I thought it to be a more mentally freeing state of being, opening his path to both ultimate success and ultimate failure simultaneously, free to make their path. He was a joy, an endlessly curious and cuddly little thing in his larval form, the Urthani being a moth-based species. Then after he finished pupating, he emerged as a fully grown and fur-covered moth. It was bliss raising him, a project that was endlessly rewarding. She trails off and looks away wistfully, then snaps back to facing the camera like a lecturer once more. I feared for his safety, however, so I cloned him with the intention of using the clone for organ donations or as a perfectly compatible blood donor. Then my dream turned into a nightmare. She pauses again and takes a deep breath, her entire body swelling with the air she's pulled in. He was heading out for furthering his education when the power core of the ship he was on overloaded and catastrophically detonated. The last moment of his life was spent rushing towards the core in a vain and fruitless hope to try and contain the situation. He wasn't able to clear even a quarter of the vessel, and his body was atomized in the detonation. There's a creaking noise, and the podium distorts and tears under her grip with a shriek of rending metal. "I beg your pardon, I will be back shortly." Things shift, and she's back behind another podium. Now, as you can imagine, this left me in a terrible place, one that 300 years later I'm only now coming out of. I kept the clone as a form of memento, keeping it asleep, keeping it alive. I tweaked it a few times so that it would require less maintenance. Common things, nothing grand or unusual in the wider galaxy. She looks away again, as if ashamed. Over the 300 years, I slowly, ritualistically, parted with the mementos of my son. Dead is dead, and there was no coming back. Being mired by the pains of the past would not make my life better. However, I could never dispose of the clone. I couldn't. "Poor girl," Mama's older sister mutters. There's some general mutters of agreement. Then I started to overcome that, slowly prepare myself to get rid of it, to finally move on and let go. Perhaps one day even heal enough to be a mother again, Morgana explains, and she has to wipe away tears from multiple eyes. As this was happening, I discovered a lost colony reduced to primitive technology levels. It was on a world in wild space labeled as Lacan, not the first world called that. It's one of those odd words that has a similar meaning in multiple, completely unrelated languages, crudely translating in the majority of them to home. So it's a very popular name for a world, city, ship, or space station. She then smiles. And yes, there have been jokes, and in fact, entire comedy movies about going from the station Lacan on the good ship Lacan to the city of Lacan on Lacan, which is at war with the vile hordes from the distant planet Lacan. Essentially, take a very unserious action movie and replace the names of all places, vehicles, and nationalities with Lacan. It makes for quite the dialogue. Of course, by the time you're done watching the movie, Lacan doesn't even sound like a word anymore. "All right, who do I have to bribe to get that in the local theaters?" Pa asks, and there's a chuckle. Anyways, at the time I didn't have sufficient funding to fully uplift this failed colony and return all the lost technology and history to them. I lodged notices with the Galactic Council and any other form of authority I needed to try and get them help. There's a creak of the metal again. My pleas went unheard, so I tried again. I was ignored again, so I set up a system to remind them every 6 months. I was then served a cease and desist order for spamming. "That's messed up," someone notes. So I found another solution. I'm a scientist, not a businesswoman, so I made it into a project and secured funding for it. How much intervention is actually needed to restore a lost colony to greatness? And oh, look at that. I have a test subject ready and well away from civilized space, so no one anyone cares anything about will be hurt by this. Now, I actually made some progress with this. I helped advance them from a late Bronze Age, early Iron Age, to the advent of gunpowder and the widespread use of chemistry beyond the most basics of medicine. As I was preparing for the next portion of the Uplift program, humanity left cruel space, which, while fascinating, was being documented and recorded from every angle. There would be plenty of data for me to peruse later. And then one of my former students, who owed me a great deal of money, stole a small number of retaining bands that still have a human imprint, which now behooves me to explain what that actually means. A retaining band or retention helmet. There are many names and variants for this form of technology, but it pushes aside the most dangerous and common side effect of a regenerative coma, which is the loss of memory. It effectively copies a person's mind and downloads it back into the mind after the healing is finished. Modern ones have a self-deletion feature after the healing to preserve privacy afterwards. However, this can be, and in this case was, disrupted, preserving the copy of the mind. And here we go. Pa notes. To my shame, but also not as it's turned out so well, when she asked to use the band as a way to pay back her debt, I accepted. The prospect of having something so unusual to study was beyond fascinating. With that mental copy, which was of Horace Blue, I'm not entirely certain how much of his family is going to see this, but suffice to say, Horace needs no introduction to you. She turns away for a bit, clearly rallying her thoughts. I thought I was finally letting go, that I was expanding my experiment, learning more and finally healing, draining the last of an old and diseased wound. I placed that mental imprint of Horace onto Emmanuel's clone and initiated the download. I then let it delete itself afterwards and then bundled the now definitely not my child into a survival pod. A pod I launched at Lacan like missile, carrying all the regret, pain, and loss away with it. I felt free. For the first time in centuries, I felt... She's looking away again. Then humanity itself shocked me. They had an answer to the theft. Every soldier that had their memory stolen was trained to teleport a single item across galactic distances. That alone is an absurd and nearly impossible reaction. Then they shocked me again. The copy of Horace in the clone thrived, escaped captivity, and raced their way across a shattered world, making allies, learning quickly, and mastering their body, until they took martial command of an entire organization that I had actually helped by seeding them with information, and he used them to make contact with the original, who teleported a two-way communicator and distress beacon the impossible distance. I caught the signal and tuned in, listening. Then the wounds opened again as I heard my son's voice, different, but still so familiar. She trails away again. They caught me. They found out I was tuned in. Likely it was just suspicion that I reacted poorly to. They started passing information. And Jasper, the copy of Horace, started taking up my son's name to try and get answers out of me. I reacted poorly. She rallies a little faster now. Then he did something that shouldn't be possible. Something that I'm not sure if I believe it. But he's presented too much proof and evidence. I've hacked into the Dauntless information network. I saw the video he sent. He became Emmanuel again. He has his memories, his knowledge. Everything I taught him, it is not possible, but it's happened. He even picked up his old accent again. It shouldn't be possible. So this leads us to now. I am rushing to the opposite end of the galaxy to try and see if it's somehow possible for my child to come back. Racing against the person whose mind I stole to experiment with. The experiment which is bringing me back my child. She looks away again. It's apparently her thing when she's at a loss for words. Then her face hardens and she faces the camera again. I don't know what I'm going to see when I arrive on Lacan. I'm a week out at this point. I do not know what's going to happen, but I have wronged your child, and by extension I have wronged your family. This is my attempt to explain myself. This is my apology. I can offer little else to the main family, but I can teach and vouch for those outside of cruel space. But above all else, I just want my son back. Then the video just ends and a timer is up until the next one. Damn, someone says. Yeah. So all aliens do look like porn stars, Horace's cousin Liam states. Is that really what you're focusing on? His sister blasts into him as he laughs. Oh, come on. We had the sexy spider scientist giving us a lecture and you're trying to tell me I'm the only one with the Y boner. Oh my fucking God.